Chapter 1051 Paradox _2. Damn it, why wouldn't Lane just leave that mirror for me? With it, I could have anything I want, and no one could stop me. If there were the penetrating power of the mind combined with the spatial power of the Spleer mirror, perhaps the white dragon truly could achieve her desires. Feeling irritated, Isarania rolled once again above the sea of dreams. In an instant, countless beings in the mortal realm were awakened, only to be completely bewildered upon waking. Luckily, this is the dream domain. If it were the mortal realm, this would have been a natural disaster. However, Bai's temper comes quick and leaves just as quickly. In the blink of an eye, she was no longer angry, and began blinking her eyes, starting to use her usually idle brain. In a breath, the sea of dreams flickered. Endless inspiration surged in her heart, forming dream bubbles floating around Bai. Pleased, Isarania immediately spread her wings and soared above the sea of dreams. Hey, I knew it. There's no problem, Lord Bai. No problem Lady Isarania cannot solve. I almost forgot. That sneaky-looking fellow left quite a bit of divine power in the dream spirit realm. With its help, mere deities, easily handled. The moment the thought arose, gray mist was born. It passed through several layers of the spirit realm, heading silently towards the mortal realm, causing Dionysus, who was standing, to fall into a deep sleep. Above the valley, using the golden scales as the foundation, a small space shaped by changing space was observed slightly by the goddess of law. Under her black veil, her eyes seemed to see something, but ultimately, she did nothing. It's just a dream after all. As an immortal deity, this has never been a threat. You have answered the first question correctly. Though I did not use my full power, you have also proven you are not a delusional fool. As such, human named Heracles, from now on, you have the right to leave alive from my domain. These are the rules set in place. Even I, as their master, cannot change them. However, if you answer the remaining 2 questions incorrectly, you will only be able to take your life with you. The rest will still remain here. The voice was deep, causing the surroundings to rumble loudly. In the valley, the questioning between hero and demon continued. The previously prostrated Sphinx had now sat up, gazing intently at the human in front of it whose size was significantly smaller than its own. As the Sphinx had said before, it did not use any particularly strong methods for the first question. It not only allowed Heracles to choose one of 2 questions to answer, but the loopholes were much bigger than anticipated. Many in the crowd had guessed as much, it was just that the great hero disdained to choose that method. But now it was getting serious. Young man, the outcome of a question often does not lie in the puzzle itself. The real checkmate is when your answer itself is a mistake. The previous one was just the beginning. As the son of the divine king from Mount Olympus, you indeed had a shortcut available. Choosing not to take this easy path indeed proves your wisdom, but you will not have such good opportunities coming next. So, tell young mortal, are you prepared to return with honors, or continue to answer my questions? Advancing is not necessarily reckless. Retreating does not imply cowardice. Heaven and purgatory sometimes may well be one and the same, and the paths to both choices now lie before you. No need for more words. I choose to continue. Calmly speaking, the great hero interrupted Sphinx's temptation. Seeing this, the Sphinx merely shrugged its shoulders, showing no fear. Very well. Since this is your decision, please listen to the question. O human named Heracles, your previous answer was indeed clever. You involved the spirit realm but did not mention its master, a feat unmatched by other primordial gods. After all, you know of the existence of dreams and their countless numbers. The primordial ancient gods did not forbid mentioning dreams, so you used it to describe the stars. But under the cover of lightless or eternal night, no one knows what lies inside. Even if you knew, you wouldn't dare use it for a comparison. This is a demonstration of your wisdom, and I have nothing to object to. However, since you mentioned the spirit realm, I too have a story to share with you. Silver Moon City, you must have heard of it. In the distant past, it was once visited by angels. These perfect beings possessed power comparable to gods, yet also harbored faith akin to that of zealots. Young human, the story I am going to tell is related to this. Unchanged in demeanor, the great hero was already on guard internally. Telling a story before asking a question, this probably wasn't so simple. However, the rules of the Sphinx's domain did not prohibit it from telling a story before asking the question, as the story itself could be part of the question. So, Heracles simply nodded without any objection. Please speak. I'm all ears. Very well. With a grin, the Sphinx began to tell the story. The story is quite simple. It begins like this. It was rumored that one day, the angel of the Lord descended upon mortal realm in Silver Moon City. Boundless moonlight shone upon the earth, turning the white hair of the elders black and causing sprouting vegetation to grow. The amputated limbs were regenerated, and the sick healed themselves. Under the true and unmistakable divine miracle, countless mortals knelt down, grateful for the grace of the deity and the greatness of the angel. Moreover, a zealot crawled forward, expressing his wishes to the noble angel. Great incarnation of the Lord in the world, he said. I have witnessed your might, something Olympus's fake gods have never granted to humans. I wish to devoutly worship the all-powerful sovereign, in gratefulness for his supreme benevolence. But respected your highness, please forgive my ignorance. I have seen your power, and thus understood your might. Therefore, I have composed songs and poems to praise your abilities, and have created paintings and reliefs to commemorate your courage. But, respected angel who spreads glory, the great Lord conducts his way in the heavens, which my abilities could not perceive. He conducts his way on earth, which my senses could not detect. As a believer of the Lord, I am unable to know the Lord's might. Surely this is my fault. Yet it is also beyond my capability, hence I seek your guidance. As I said, young human, this devout believer asked the angel about the Lord's might, and under the moonlight, within the illusion of dreams, the angel gave him an answer. She told the believer that the sovereign who resides behind the 7 curtains is the beginning and the end of his kingdom. Within his domain, he can be all-knowing and all-powerful. Pausing briefly, Sphinx smiled at this point. It flicked its finger slightly, placing a stone in front of Heracles. This is just a story. I am not sure of its truth. But, young human, at the end of the story, there was a faithless who heard about this incident and posed a question. He first marveled at the greatness of the Lord and praised the benevolence of the angel. But in the very end, he still harbored doubts about the Lord's might. Because all-knowing, all-powerful. What a magnificent title. He dared not deny it, nor did he want to. But what puzzled him was, this all-knowing and all-powerful Lord, could he indeed create a stone that even he himself could not lift? Chapter 1052. Cast the lots. In the nameless valley, the great hero and the Sphinx stood facing each other. The second question had already been asked. Simply giving any answer would clinch the victory in this round. However, Heracles could not be so hasty. He had to find the flaw in the opponent's words. As for forcibly explaining, just as the Sphinx had mentioned in its questions, whether dividing the past and future from the perspective of time, or separating subject from object in terms of independence, these all seemed interpretable, yet in truth were not so convincing as answers. This was perhaps inevitable, as humans themselves cannot understand what omniscience and omnipotence truly are. How can one provide a reasonable explanation for what they cannot comprehend? There was a moment of silence in the field, with only the sound of the wind blowing. At this moment, the great hero was even considering solving the problem in another way. Yes, solving the problem in another way, not thinking about the problem from another angle. In fact, Heracles was no brute. He dared to begin this wisdom-related question and answer session without any defenses. Naturally, because he was already prepared. Relying solely on his own strength, neither the indestructible lion's skin nor the poisonous teeth might be able to stop the Sphinx's domain of order. But he possessed something obtained not long after the trial began, which could help him offset the annihilation of rules. It was given to him by Andi, a power obtained from the ruins of an ancient human city of the Bronze Age. On that day, a great flood flowed from east to west, covering the mortal realm for 7 days and nights. It was like a hand of destruction sweeping the earth, bringing disasters of annihilation to mortals. But on that same day, there were people who were erased from death, viewing the flood as a non-entity. In this piece of history, Andi recreated the miracles of the past and transformed into a talisman. He called it false immortality, and the great hero had confirmed before he came. Since in the valley at this moment stood the Sphinx and not Typhon, the ancestor of 10,000 demons, although its rules were powerful, they were unlikely to break through the shelter of this immortality. Should I solve this demon directly under the suppression of rules? But to be strict, it hasn't really done anything deserving death. Even today, I came looking for it myself. Heracles hesitated, remaining silent. Yet before him, the Sphinx was evidently unaware of this. What? Still not going to answer? Give up. Humans cannot comprehend things beyond their understanding. Gods are the same. True omniscience and omnipotence are false propositions. Even wisdom like mine cannot answer them. With a soft chuckle, the Sphinx shook its head slightly. It did not believe this human could provide a reasonable explanation. This question and answer session was already over. However, in front of it, the great hero's brows furrowed slightly. He felt as if he had perceived something, yet it was not so clear. Sphinx, did you just tell me that omniscience and omnipotence are false propositions? Aren't they? Casually responding, the Sphinx stirred the stones on the ground. Perhaps, indeed it is a false proposition. Slowly nodding, Heracles lifted his head slightly. Facing the towering demon, the stature of a human is still too short. But whether it's a false proposition or not is no longer important, Sphinx. I have already found the answer. However, before that, I want to express my doubts about your question. That is your right, the Sphinx responded blandly. You may begin at any time. Chapter 1053. Throwing the piece _2. Should I directly deal with this demon by defying the restraints of the rules? But strictly speaking, it hasn't really done anything deserving of death. Even today, it was I who came to its doorstep. Silent and speechless, Heracles was somewhat hesitant. However, in front of him, the Sphinx seemed completely unaware of this hesitation. What's the matter? No answer yet? Give it up. Humans cannot understand things beyond their cognition, and neither can gods. True omniscience and omnipotence are but a fallacy. This is something that even I, with my wisdom, cannot answer. Chuckling softly, the Sphinx gently shook its head. It did not believe this human could provide a reasonable explanation. The questioning was over. Yet in front of it, the great hero's brows furrowed slightly. He felt as though he had realized something, but it was not yet clear. Sphinx, did you just tell me that omniscience and omnipotence are fallacies? Are they not? Casually retorting, the Sphinx played with pebbles on the ground. Perhaps they are indeed fallacies. Slowly nodding, Heracles slightly raised his head. Looking up at the towering demon, the stature of humans still seemed too small. But whether it's a fallacy or not no longer matters. Sphinx, I found the answer. But before that, let me express my doubts about your question. That is your right, the Sphinx spoke indifferently. You may begin at any time. Very well. So then, O child of Typhon, listen to me. Putting aside the use of the talisman for the moment, the great hero posed his own question to the Sphinx. When I heard you tell that story before, I felt that something was amiss, but only just now did I understand the root of what was wrong. Just as in our questioning, under the shroud of your ordered rules, our positions are equal. Much like the scales of the goddess of justice that weigh all things, on its two sides, must be placed items of equal value. Demanding that a blind person distinguishes colors is unjust questioning, which order would not permit. Sand and gold, when placed on two ends of a scale, to force them into balance, is an act of injustice. So at the end of it all, the faithless in your story is no different. The cognition of humans has its limits, and so do all gods. They call the things within their cognition logic, and discard anything outside their cognition from logic. So, asking someone to draw a circle is logical, and both mortals and deities believe it can be done. Asking someone to draw a square is also logical, and no one would question its reality. But if you ask someone to draw a squared circle, from the myriad stars to the bottomless abyss, no one thinks it can succeed. No god believes it can exist, because it exceeds their cognition and hence violates the logic in their eyes. However, does a squared circle truly not exist? That I cannot answer. But I do know that an insect jackal with a lifespan of just a morning will not believe in the night, and a creature that only lives through a single spring cannot fathom autumn or winter. This is the limitation of life's wisdom, inherently difficult to break. His voice was calm. In the process of answering, the great hero felt as if the barriers within him were also breaking. The secrets between heaven and earth are inexhaustible. What in this world is absolute? If there is anything, it is probably the fact that there is no absolute. The faithless try to understand God with their own logic, and the God they comprehend is the one within their logic, not the true God. The questions they pose are beyond their own logic, not truly unachievable questions. Whether God is indeed all-knowing and all-powerful is unknown. Whether the truly all-knowing and all-powerful can create a stone they cannot lift is also unknown. However, the faithless attempt to make the God within their logic perform tasks outside their logic. That is truly the impossible task, and their questions are nonsensical. If they wish to question, then they can only do this. Understand God with their own logic and then ask God whether he can perform tasks that are comprehensible within their logic, in order to verify God's all-knowledge. Or they must admit that God exists beyond their logic, and only then would they be able to use questions beyond their logic to test God's all-powerfulness. Correspondence between the internal and external unity of the two, only then is the question valuable. As for their previous questions, they are meaningless in themselves. His statement stops there, and strictly speaking, these explanations have nothing to do with the answer itself. Yet both Sphinx and Heracles know that his words were not meant to answer the question in the first place. Just as the Sphinx previously said, the outcome of the question lies outside the question. When matters outside of the question are resolved, the question itself becomes unimportant. Therefore, facing the gaze of the Sphinx, the great hero slowly delivered his final answer. To your question, my answer is yes, because since the question itself is meaningless, I no longer need to consider the reasoning for correctness or incorrectness in my answer. And since reasoning is no longer important, hence, my act of responding is merely derived from my respect for the deity itself. As the word yes was spoken, the familiar fluctuations of the law appeared again. The law itself does not care about whether a question is internal or external. It only cares about the act of answering the question. And nearly at the same moment, the law, which knows it cannot verify all knowledge and all powerfulness, judged Heracles the winner of another round, granting him his second victory. I've won, Your Excellency Sphinx. Let us proceed directly to the third round. The domain swayed slightly, and the turmoil brought about by 2 consecutive failures made it unstable. However, the great hero obviously didn't care about this. He was just waiting for the next question. Silent, besides the once Oedipus, the human before her was the first to consecutively solve 2 questions. Yet looking into Heracles' eyes, Sphinx suddenly said, "There's no need for a third round, young human, I concede." His expression changed subtly, and upon hearing this, the great hero's first reaction was not joy, but vigilance. There's no need for a third round. He didn't think the great demon before him was the type to willingly rush to their death. Oedipus, in the past, Committed suicide here after answering 2 questions, and perhaps beneath the valley, the opponent's blood still remains. Don't be nervous, human. I am serious. Actually, this is also to preserve my own life. Shrugging his shoulders, Sphinx ignored Heracles' wariness. You should know, as I said before, if you had not answered any question correctly, death would have been certain for you. After all, you did not sacrifice yourself on the scales before the valley. So even if I didn't want to kill you, the law would have immediately erased you. But young human, as you might have guessed, the reverse is also true. If all my 3 questions are thwarted, even if you do not wish to kill me, I am doomed to die. I don't want to die, nor do I want to gamble on your failure to answer the 3rd question with my eternal life. So, I'd rather give up directly and give you everything that belongs to the victor. There's nothing wrong with that. Accept my surrender and you've won. Everything that has accumulated in this domain over the centuries is yours. Likewise, I can swear to you, I swear to the Styx River, I swear to all gods above and beneath, that I have not deceived you. When you accept my surrender, although you cannot take my life, you can take everything else. Chapter 1054. Playing Dead. Typhon's offspring are scattered across the world. Among them are demons, and others are ancient evil creatures. The former's strength is akin to the Titans. They are not deities, lack authority, but possess unique abnormal powers not inferior to the latter. Those with abnormal powers that even gods find difficult to unriddle are the well-known great demons. Conversely, the wandering ancient evil beings of this world, despite having various abilities, often lack such absoluteness. To put it more precisely, those ancient evil beings are not mechanism monsters. Their only common and formidable ability might just be the formidable undying nature stemming from the source of their strength. The Sphinx is a demon, hence it only possesses the abnormal powers of a demon, lacking the robust vitality of evil creatures. It is not a deity, and thus cannot draw upon the faith that has been accumulated over millennia. Inch by inch, golden light emerged from within its body, where the life and souls of past fallen heroes were transferred. However, Heracles did not choose to accept those dead souls, instead letting them dissipate with the wind. A warm sensation emerged on his body. Just like the Sphinx, he too was unable to utilize the accumulated power of faith. They hovered around Heracles just as they had around Pandora, and after losing all vitality, the body of the Sphinx began to transform. From the tail to the paws, from the waist to the head. Soon after, a huge stone statue replaced the demon that was there before. It was as if it was sculpted by the ghostly craftsmanship of nature, born from the heavens, without a trace of human interference. From this moment on, another child of Typhon died at the hands of Heracles, but unlike before, defeating such an opponent did not bring joy to the great hero. Clang! A crisp sound of metal striking stone. Looking down, he saw an archaic yet exquisitely crafted scale falling to the ground in front of Heracles. Without the need for investigation, intuition told him that this was the legendary divine artifact, the golden scales on which anything could be measured on its 2 sides. The tangible, the intangible, the concrete, the conceptual. Stepping forward to pick up the scale, Heracles did not know why it appeared here. This was the stake of the goddess of justice and the Sphinx, and now that the demon was dead, shouldn't it return to the hands of the goddess? Even if it didn't return, Typhon's offspring are scattered across the world. Among them are demons, and others are ancient evil creatures. The former's strength is akin to the Titans. They are not deities, lack authority, but possess unique abnormal powers not inferior to the latter. Those with abnormal powers that even gods find difficult to unriddle are the well-known great demons. Conversely, the wandering ancient evil beings of this world, despite having various abilities, often lack such absoluteness. To put it more precisely, those ancient evil beings are not mechanism monsters. Their only common and formidable ability might just be the formidable undying nature stemming from the source of their strength. The Sphinx is a demon, hence it only possesses the abnormal powers of a demon, lacking the robust vitality of evil creatures. It is not a deity, and thus cannot draw upon the faith that has been accumulated over millennia. Inch by inch, golden light emerged from within its body, where the life and souls of past fallen heroes were transferred. However, Heracles did not choose to accept those dead souls, instead letting them dissipate with the wind. A warm sensation emerged on his body. Just like the Sphinx, he too was unable to utilize the accumulated power of faith. They hovered around Heracles just as they had around Pandora, and after losing all vitality, the body of the Sphinx began to transform. From the tail to the paws, from the waist to the head. Soon after, a huge stone statue replaced the demon that was there before. It was as if it was sculpted by the ghostly craftsmanship of nature, born from the heavens, without a trace of human interference. From this moment on, another child of Typhon died at the hands of Heracles, but unlike before, defeating such an opponent did not bring joy to the great hero. Clang! A crisp sound of metal striking stone. Looking down, he saw an archaic yet exquisitely crafted scale falling to the ground in front of Heracles. Without the need for investigation, intuition told him that this was the legendary divine artifact, the golden scales on which anything could be measured on its 2 sides. The tangible, the intangible, the the concrete, the conceptual. Stepping forward to pick up the scale, Heracles did not know why it appeared here. This was the stake of the goddess of justice and the Sphinx, and now that the demon was dead, shouldn't it return to the hands of the goddess? Even if it didn't return, why did it appear before him? Perhaps it's a reward, a tool lent to you for use. Prometheus, who had maintained silence during the previous exchange, stepped forward to explain. Perseus also experienced this, as more than one deity lent divine artifacts to him. Your achievements far exceed his, so it's not strange for you to receive similar treatment. I see. I understand now. Slowly nodding, the great hero stowed the scales away. He did not know what use he had for it, but after all it was a powerful divine artifact. Having secured the item, Heracles surveyed the valley. There was nothing here that needed his attention anymore. And now, he must continue forward. Chapter 1055. Playing Dead_2. So Dionysus, is there anything else you want to do here? The great hero asked and waited a while. However, to his surprise, the other party did not respond for a long time. Turning his head, he saw the handsome young man leaning against a large tree, his eyes closed in contemplation under the shade. Taking a few steps forward, Heracles was about to say something. However, only upon getting closer did he realize that Dionysus was in a strange state. Has he fallen asleep? A look of puzzlement flashed through his eyes. Was his face-off with Sphinx that long and that boring? For a moment, he was unable to understand. But the great hero still decided to wake him up. It was time to leave, and besides, if he wanted to sleep, there was no need to do it here. Shaking his head slightly, Heracles reached out and shook Dionysus's shoulder. Hey, wake up! Wake up! Can't you move a bit? Poke! Poke! I'm poking. Dream Spirit Realm. Ancient God's Dream. The sky is bright, the earth is dark. 12 stone pillars support the sky and earth, and tension chains hold their connection with the sky and earth. Rather than pillars, they looked more like giant tombstones. They stood on the land like desolate graves, contrasting the holy sky. In the very center of the earth, a bottomless huge pit where the white dragon folded its vast wings, curiously staring at the corpse-like young deity in the pit. Sharp fingertips poked repeatedly at the seemingly unconscious deity. But even as blood hissed, the other party remained unresponsive. Poke, squirt, seeing another little fountain, appearing on the body in front. A slightly unhappy mood emerged in Isarania's crystal-clear eyes. In her perception, the guy in front of her was clearly awake, but for some reason he kept pretending to be asleep. After all, in the entire dream spirit realm, there are only awake beings and beings lost in sleep. No third possibility exists. Even if real outsiders enter this place, once they faint or fall into deep sleep here, they would only limit their own dreams under the ubiquitous rule of dreams, which might even surface out of their bodies, creating a new realm of dream bubbles, ultimately wrapping themselves up. So since there are no traces of dreams around Dionysus, and he was easily pulled into this ancient god's dream that can bear the strength of the white dragon, his awakening is needless to say. So, is this what mortals call playing dead? If he were really dead, I could resurrect him. This is my territory after all. But I remember that human named Nual once told me, nobody can wake someone who is pretending to sleep, thus by extension, I can't perpetually revive someone who is pretending to be dead. With a serious expression, looking at the corpse on the ground, Isarania suddenly had an epiphany. She felt she had discovered a loophole and it was quite feasible. Since a sleeping person can be woken up but a pretending sleeper cannot, the best way to wake a pretending sleeper is to first make him really fall asleep, and then wake him up. Making a sleeper wake is hard, but putting an awake person to sleep is easy. Similarly, reviving a pretend dead person is hard, but killing someone is easy. The best way to wake someone who is pretending to be dead is to first kill him, then resurrect him. This way he can no longer pretend. Indeed, I, Isarania, am the smartest dragon in the world. The excitement in her eyes was almost spilling out. Not figuratively but quite literally. In the world of dreams, emotions themselves can become physical entities. Looking at the deity lying in a pool of blood before her, the white dragon decided to act immediately. But just as she was about to do something, she slumped down in defeat again. Damn it, how exactly should one go about killing someone? It seemed she had never done such a thing before. This is no joke, for although Bai is not a dragon who has never killed, she indeed has never killed any creature with the intent of murder. If someone dies because of her, it would only be a collateral consequence caused by the white dragon. After all, in her eyes, the concepts of life and death were rather vague. Dreams record all traces of the deceased, and if she wished, any life could be akin to eternal life. I've got it. I don't know how, so I'll learn. After all, that's what they say in those rare dreams of deities, that he is the most brutal deity in the world. Nodding vigorously, the white dragon gazed up at the sky from the pit in the center of the earth. The dream of the ancient gods is boundless, and compared to the 12 stone pillars standing in the mortal realm, Isarania's form is almost invisibly small. An immensely thick and decaying aura vibrates between heaven and earth, stirring infinite pressure, but Bai ignores it, for in the realm of dreams, she is the true sovereign. Yeah. A soft call shattered the boundless clouds. The 9 layers of clouds shattered in succession, and under the effect of some invisible force, they began to rotate, eventually forming a vortex that connects heaven and earth. The center of the vortex faced directly towards the white dragon, while in Isarania's eyes, an imposing figure akin to the vast sky carried the stars and looked down upon the creatures of the earth. No, there are no creatures on the earth of the ancient god's dream. Here there is only the earth itself, and those 12 pillar-like tombstones. In a distant past, the supreme divine king shattered Mount of the gods and cast his rebellious children into sculptures, eternally suppressing them beside their mother. He should be awake, as the double dream domain was not born in the ancient god's dream. Yet, he is not awake, for his presence stems from the backlash of incomplete symbols and the balance of great power. Today's dream spirit realm cannot bear his complete dream. Hence he appears here but has never truly awakened. Looking up at the sky, this scene alone could terrify any creature of the chaos terrain to their core. Yet in Bai's eyes, it was merely a tool to help her kill. It's you, come, kill this guy. With an exuberant voice, the white dragon grabbed the corpse on the ground, preparing to fly high into the sky. At this moment, the corpse seemed to finally realize something was wrong and hurriedly opened its eyes. Damn it, this white dragon really knows how to stir up trouble. And him, so this is the Sky Divine King recorded in the ancient history of this realm? Even if it's only his dream, it still retains a trace of symbolic imagery and the original Divine King's might. Such an existence is also an outright failure. No, I can't contact him, at least not now. His mouth twitched, looking up at the supreme being in the sky of ancient god's dream. Dionysus felt quite helpless. No choice. If he now directly contacts something related to the Divine King's dignity, then it's very likely he will be locked by chaos, forced into an early position as one of the local spirits with identity. Logically speaking, becoming a local god isn't bad. Even the neighboring outer god Blood Mother tree is such, and he plans to do the same in the future. But equally, joining is about the person, the timing, the state, and the strength. The value, how much value, the current condition of the other party, these are all meticulous considerations. Others, the tree's joining brings complete power and essence together. His joining, his power has long been the spoils of war of others, and he himself is but an empty dignitary of incomplete existence. With that, it's straightforward to imagine what kind of treatment he would get. Strange. His existence should not be detectable by someone of her level, even if. Chapter 1056. The Unfindable Passage. Boundless darkness, indescribable scenes. It felt like drifting between existence and non-existence, unable to distinguish inside from outside. In the dream, Dionysus felt he had done many things and said many words. In the realm of elusive light and shadow, he saw the sky falling and the earth shaking. Statues turned into human forms, replacing the old master's glory. Starlight descended, rising from his own being. A transaction and exchange. One descended underground for this, and another ascended to the mountain peak. The eternal lost eternity, and light ascended in the darkness. As if pierced by the light through chaotic thoughts, Dionysus finally found himself once more. Is this a dream? An endless earthly dream? Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Ha! Awakened by the calling voice in the nameless valley. Suddenly awakening, Dionysus found the piercing brightness difficult to withstand. In front of him, Heracles looked at him with concern. Clearly, the great hero hadn't expected his companion to suddenly fall into such deep sleep, nearly failing to wake up. Wait! Stop calling. I'm already awake. Heracles, did I just suddenly fall asleep? Right hand holding his forehead, left hand stopping the large hand shaking his body. Dionysus felt his head was somewhat foggy, as if he wasn't peacefully sleeping but was attacked in the dream. Ah, yes, and Ammon too, he seemed to have dreamt about him. In the dream, Ammon asked if he still remembered the vows he had made. Dionysus naturally said he hadn't forgotten. Although he is an undying deity, he has acknowledged this friend. He will carry his part, living forever in the chaos world. Dionysus, I don't know what exactly happened to you. After I solved Sphinx's 3 riddles, you fell into a coma here. With a slight sigh of relief, seeing his companion finally awake, the great hero reached out and pulled him up from the ground. What happened? Were you somehow ambushed? This deep sleep doesn't seem to be natural. Perhaps, but it's already over now. Slightly shaking his head, Dionysus tried to release the heaviness in his mind. Chapter 1057 The Missing Passage _2. Sovereign or law, they are the same as the rules of the Sphinx. Actually, they all stem from one of the highest and core parts of the present world, order. They either integrate, one yielding to another and thus achieving the other's strength, or they will conflict and find it hard to coexist. Thus the ancient titans left the divine court, and perhaps the power of the Sphinx also affected me. Learning from mistakes, next time, I won't be so careless. Thoughts flickered through his mind as Dionysus rested for a while at the same place. Finally, he indicated that he was fine and could continue the journey. Regarding Zeus's power, it couldn't be directly mentioned. Thus, Dionysus politely declined Prometheus's offer to check his physical condition. Fine, since you're okay. Let's head towards the real site of Mount Othrys now. Nodding slightly, Heracles did not refuse. Having obtained the Sphinx's legacy, he felt a strange sense of swelling throughout his body. He now wanted to fight someone or start a fire. Although according to the records on the Purgatory Book, the road under Mount Othrys leading to the fourth layer of the spirit realm is a dead end, he still wanted to see it. After all, he remembered the words of the Athenian sage and his intuition from the C3 to 347. No matter what he did, whether he just wanted to reach the fourth layer of the spirit realm to fulfill his vow to himself, it seemed that someday he would definitely walk that correct path. Starting from the bottom of the heavenly pillar in the present world, walking along the ridge of Mount Sinai all the way to its end. There, all doubts could be answered, all difficulties would no longer exist. Maybe one day he wouldn't need logic but could personally verify the Sphinx's questions. The so-called all-knowing and all-powerful. Is it true? Heading west, since leaving the nameless valley, Heracles didn't know how many miles he had traveled. Compared to when he arrived, he now had a divine artifact from the goddess of law. He wondered if the goddess won her bet with the Sphinx since he caused its death. Speaking of which, it's a bit strange. Andy, have you ever thought about a problem? Silently speaking in his heart, using the ingeniously crafted mind thread of Andy, the great hero could communicate directly with it in his mind. The rules of the Sphinx's domain state that once someone begins the question and answer with the Sphinx, if they can't answer even one question, they will lose everything. Conversely, if they answer all 3 questions correctly, the Sphinx will lose everything, granting fame to the answerer. That's right. Yes, Andy replied, already knowing what Heracles wanted to ask. You mean that with these clear rules, Themis as the Lord of Justice and Law, the goddess of justice, she could also see through this. So, her bet with the Sphinx was meaningless from the start, because even if the Sphinx lost, a dead being couldn't fulfill the bet. The power of the Sphinx's rules is so strong that even the gods who enter its domain couldn't escape the rule's punishment upon failing because this power harms both the enemy and itself. It couldn't even bind the Sphinx itself. So in this case, the goddess shouldn't make such foolish moves, right? More or less. The great hero agreed skeptically. The Sphinx told him before dying that its life and death were also a riddle, with the answer long placed before Heracles. Yet perhaps the first 3 questions consumed too much of the great hero's energy, making it hard for him to figure out the reason immediately. Well, I'm not sure if I'm right. I can only offer you a guess. Changing position in the front pocket, the puppet smiled and said, You should know, the goddess of law is not just the goddess of justice, but also the goddess of fairness. Thus, in whatever she does, she wouldn't solely favor one side. However, from when she restrained the Sphinx to stay in the valley to setting the equal value balance at the entrance, exchanging divine power for the lives of the answerers, although these actions were consented by the Sphinx and done fairly by her payment, if examined closely, there is somewhat of a bias towards humans. But you should understand, Heracles, Themis the goddess of law was never human. She is an ancient titan, daughter of the heavenly father and mother earth, a lawgiver who eradicates tumors in the present world. In her eyes, be it demons, humans, giants, sea monsters, or even ants underfoot, they are all equally ordinary beings. Other than that, what special thing do humans have? So if you think carefully, you'll find that the Sphinx's treatment was the same as humans. It was restricted to the valley, seemingly a cage, but, if looked from a longer timeline, if it still rampaged over the human world, though gods might not be able to do anything to it, one day, when Oedipus the fated one calculated by the gods arrived before it, could it really evade this calamity and ultimately wait for your arrival? It lost freedom but gained back hundreds of years of life. If viewed from this perspective, that stone balance before the valley might reveal another result. You mean? Mind slightly moved, Heracles felt he started to understand something. The goddess left a glimmer of hope to the humans coming for the question not because of special pity for those coming for wealth, status, fame, who were ultimately driven by greed. But she first gave mercy to their opponent, thus giving them an equal opportunity? The goddess first set the bet with the Sphinx with a divine artifact, then this valley. Just as exchanging freedom with the goddess, the divine power crystal can save them from the rule's erasure. Answerers exchanged freedom with her to gain life-saving divine power, at the cost of lifelong dedication to the cause of justice. Sphinx bet its freedom, exchanged the divine artifact, golden scales, at the cost of eternal service to the goddess upon losing. Thus the artifact I found as the bet isn't due to the goddess's favor but her fairness. Just as the failed answerers took life-saving divine power crystals becoming the Sphinx's food, the divine artifact, golden scales, is also my rightful war spoils. Heart shaken at this moment, the remote and long gaze of the ancient deity made Heracles awestruck, but her absolute fairness in actions was equally striking. She seemed the embodiment of this godhood, the proof of fairness. Looking down at the golden scales at his waist, the great hero knew that this artifact shouldn't belong to him forever. The divine power crystals were permanently paid to the Sphinx because those failed answerers ultimately left whole. Yet even if the Sphinx escaped in some way, Chapter 1058 Moon in the Water. At the foot of the former Mount of the Gods, beside a riverbed that had long dried up, To find some useful clues as quickly as possible, the group had already split up to search. Taking a few quick steps, he crossed a decaying tree stump. Dimly, Heracles could still see that this might have been a picturesque ancient forest thousands upon thousands of years ago. Back then, the wind would come, and millions of maple trees would rustle in unison. Perhaps the people living here would dance alone in the wind, speaking their hearts out to the flora. He shook his head slightly, wiping these imagined, bygone scenes from his mind. Facing the barren and desolate land before him, the great hero had no solution either. There was nothing here, let alone the true entrance to the spirit realm. Not even half a day ago, Heracles had sought help from Andy to peek into the past events of this place, such as the whereabouts of the golden humanity. The so-called entrance might be established near their former gathering place. Once found, the great hero would find the correct gateway. However, upon hearing his request, the puppet regretfully told him it was beyond its abilities. You must understand, Heracles. The opening and closing of its mouth, the sound of wood colliding on its body, could still be faintly heard. For nearly an era, this place has been one of the few forbidden lands on the Chaos Terrain. Not because some terrible beings are entrenched here, nor for fear of being seen as rebels nostalgic for the Titans by the divine king of Mount Olympus. It's because there are too many distorted rules and traps on this land, and the influence of the primordial deities lingers on for 10,000 years. I can't glimpse ancient traces here, at least not from the last era. Moreover, pardon my frankness, but I don't think the spirit realm has any direct connection with the golden humanity. I mean, their fervent, equal veneration for the deities is so perfect that it doesn't feel like the character of normal living beings. To me, they seem out of place with the spirit realm. The spirit realm should not place the entrance near such inherently locked down lives. Humph. Perhaps that's so. If I had other clues, I wouldn't want to seek traces of the golden age either. With a slight sigh, he continued forward along the riverbed. The great hero accepted An's explanation, but he had not given up the idea of searching. After all, as he said, he had no other clues at the moment. He walked a little further all the way to the end of the riverbed. There, Heracles found the site of an equally dried-up pond. And right beside the pond, Prometheus was half kneeling on the ground, studying a broken steel. Sir Prometheus, have you found anything here? Unexpectedly encountering each other after their earlier separation, the great hero couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Taking 2 steps forward, Heracles looked at the ancient steel. Weathered for thousands of years, its surface had become smooth and rough, and the few letters were no longer clear. Yet, as with the steels they had found earlier, both Prometheus and Heracles had methods to restore the inscriptions. As the forethinker's fingers slid across, one by one, the unfamiliar yet familiar characters emerged on the steel. Focusing intently, the great hero hoped to discover something useful. Redleaf Woods, blasphemer, creator. No need to read further. Rising from the ground, Prometheus interrupted Heracles' reading. There are no records about the spirit realm on this. In fact, the golden humanity had nothing to do with the spirit realm. Aside from their king, who allegedly gained knowledge of the spirit realm from dreams, their connection was merely that of creator and created. As for this steel, it records the deeds of some blasphemer. Compared to the golden humanity, her connection with the spirit realm might be closer. A blasphemer? Were there also blasphemers during the Golden Age? Heracles was surprised to hear this. In the education he received since childhood, the golden humanity was synonymous with perfect morality. Even in the mortal realm today, there is a linguistic and etymological similarity between golden and perfect. In response to the great hero's doubt, Prometheus only shook his head slowly. She was indeed recorded as a blasphemer, but she was not a member of the golden humanity. This place is where she once lived, an ancient forest named Redleaf Woods. In that era, this place was near the golden humanity. Chapter 1059 Moon in the Water _2. The so-called entrance might be established near their old gathering place. As long as the hero finds it, he can find the correct portal. However, upon hearing his request, the puppet regretfully told him it was beyond its capabilities. You must know, Heracles. As its mouth opened and closed, the faint sound of wood creaking from its body could be heard. For almost an entire epoch, this has been one of the rare forbidden lands in the Chaos Terrain. It's not because some terrifying creatures are lurking here, nor is it out of fear of being considered rebellious by the divine king of Mount Olympus for reminiscing about the Titans. It's just that this land holds too many twisted rule traps, and the residual influence of the primordial deity is never ending even after tens of thousands of years. I cannot glimpse the traces of old times here, at least not from the last epoch. Moreover, with all due respect, I do not believe that the spirit realm would have any direct connection with the golden humanity. What I mean is that kind of fervent reverence for deities, which is so perfect that it doesn't seem like the personality of normal beings, makes them feel incompatible with the spirit realm to me. The spirit realm would not place its entrance beside these life forms whose nature has been locked since birth. Sigh. Perhaps. If there were other clues, I wouldn't want to seek traces of the golden age either. With a slight sigh, he continued along the river. The hero accepted An's explanation, but he did not give up the search. After all, as he mentioned, there were no other clues at the moment. After walking for a while, he reached the end of the river. There, Heracles found the ruins of what once was a dried-up pond. Nearby, Prometheus was half kneeling on the ground, examining a broken stele intently. "Lord Prometheus, have you discovered something here?" Unexpectedly, the two who had parted ways earlier encountered each other here, and the hero couldn't help but brighten up. Taking a couple of steps forward, Heracles looked at the ancient stele. Erosion over thousands of years had made its surface smooth and rough, and most of the text was no longer clear. However, just like the few steles discovered earlier, both Prometheus and Heracles had ways to reconstruct the text. As the forethinker's fingers moved over it, strange yet familiar characters began to emerge on the stele. Focusing intently, the hero hoped to find something useful on it. "Redleaf Woods. Desecration, creation. You don't need to look anymore." Getting up from the ground, Prometheus interrupted Heracles' reading. "There is nothing about the spirit realm recorded on this. In fact, the golden humanity from the past didn't have any relation to the spirit realm. Aside from the suspicion that their king acquired some knowledge of the spirit realm from a dream, the relationship between them remained only that of creator and creation. As for this stele, it records the deeds of a certain blasphemer. Compared to the golden humanity, she may have been more closely related to the spirit realm." A blasphemer? Did the Golden Age also have blasphemers? The statement surprised him, as the education Heracles received from childhood portrayed the golden humanity as the epitome of perfection. Even now, in the mortal realm, the words golden and perfect share a close etymological relationship. Faced with the hero's skepticism, Prometheus shook his head slowly. Indeed, she was recorded as a blasphemer, but she wasn't one of the golden humanity. She used to live here, in this ancient forest once called Redleaf Woods. In those days, this place was not far from the settlements of the golden humanity. These immortals often came here to get water. Until one day, the blasphemer left this place forever, and under the power of that desecration, her former abode became hidden and invisible. A power of desecration? Furrowing his brow, the hero felt a sense of déjà vu, and from his chest pocket, Andy reminded him directly. Witchcraft. If there is any power the golden humanity deemed as desecration, it is not physical strength but the ability to command the elements like a deity. Witchcraft is precisely that power. After all, in those days, humanity was the only intelligent mortal race, and there were no diverse pathways of the transcendence. This is the first time I realize how ancient the origins of witchcraft are. Golden Age, a deity-desecrating individual, being called a blasphemer by the golden humanity proves that this being wasn't a god. Yet she could use witchcraft, truly surprising. I always thought witchcraft originated at the end of the second epic with the birth of the goddess of the magic net. So, even she wasn't the first to create witchcraft. Who then was the original creator? For the first time encountering something intriguing, Andy slowly crawled out from the hero's pocket. Gazing at the stele on the ground, Prometheus shook his head again. "No, Andy, she was the original creator. Whether or not she was the inventor, she must have been the first to display witchcraft's power in the mortal realm." With a complex expression, old memories surged in his mind. Prometheus remembered that back then, he and his brother lived harmoniously together. He was proud and conceited, thinking he had seen through the world's affairs. But now, he was Zeus' prisoner and Epimetheus was wanted by the new divine court. The giant god holding up the sky was never at peace, continually bearing the heavens at the edge of the western sea. Heracles, you may not know, but back in those days, the goddess of the magic net was not a god in the true sense. She had no authority, no domain, and even before the rise of faith, she had no way to obtain divine power. So her own parents cast her out of the sky, leaving her fallen in a corner of the mortal realm. No one knew she would someday become the master of the magic net, the source of witchcraft, and a pioneer of innovative secret techniques. The golden humanity merely followed the celestial god's will, rejecting this blasphemer. This place should be her former abode, the place where she first grew. And she, Heracles, might be the one connected to the spirit realm entrance here. Among the few present, only Dionysus hadn't met Andy before. Once under the sea, Prometheus had communicated with the puppet. Thus, the former was familiar with the latter's existence and some of his abilities. The forethinker raised his hand, signaling Andy to use his special ritual to reveal the traces of the past here. If this place is related to the goddess of the magic net, then they should search for her traces. Unless she never returned here for an entire epic, the great divine power's influence, though strong, wouldn't extend along the river of time to prevent future seekers from glimpsing what would transpire here. Nodding lightly, Andy leapt out from the hero's pocket. Exploring events that occurred within this epic shouldn't be too difficult. After all, it was one of his divinity's abilities. Drama, plays, they exist to recreate past events or interpret occurrences that never happened. Peering into history, drafting plays, and finally deriving real power, these are among Andy's methods. In no time, a grand ceremony appeared in the open space beside the pond. The puppet's fingers moved slightly, and hundreds of paper figures fell to the ground under invisible strings, dancing around the ritual track. It was like a divine witchcraft ceremony, worshipping the Chapter 1060, Flower in the Mirror. The Golden Age. So some people have lived until now. Your Highness Prometheus, what do you know about the golden remnant mentioned by the goddess of the magic net? In the present time, by the side of a dried-up pond. The stones where Hecate and Selene had once sat were long gone, and the clear pond water had turned into a place filled with only dry branches and fallen leaves. In front of Heracles, the traces of the old days reappeared, but he couldn't see the true forms of the two goddesses. Instead, he could only see a halo filled with different rules. Evidently, even though they were not of great divine power, and Hecate had not long ascended in the Bronze Age, not even stepping into the domain of strong divine power, the true forms of deities were still difficult to be reflected so easily. Through the shadows of the past, the viewers could only see the interaction between the two light clusters and some blurry, distorted sounds. I don't know. For the king of the Golden Age, I only remember that he knew he had received a divine revelation in a dream. He was the first human created by chaos. Perhaps because the god put more effort into creating him, or maybe because as the first human, he received the favor of fate in the dark. In short, he had a much longer life than his kind. But no matter how long the life is, it cannot mask the essence of mortality. Under absolute power, his life was also hard to preserve. I always thought he had died during the epic change, but I didn't expect him to live to this day. Before the great flood stirred up by the trident, Prometheus had already been taken as a prisoner, so he hadn't seen the battle between the son of the sea god and humans. Thus, facing Heracles' question, the forethinker couldn't provide an answer. His name is Cohen. This is one of the few impressions I have of him. Just as the goddess of the magic net said, he, like every golden human, is a paragon of righteousness and kindness. Besides that, I have nothing more to add. I see. Nodding slowly, the great hero accepted it despite being slightly disappointed. Indeed, the existence of the golden humans is rather unfamiliar to today's Olympian gods, as they basically did not live during that era. Without saying more, Heracles continued to focus on the shadows of the old days. The Golden Age was just a minor episode unrelated to him. It was the entrance to the spirit realm that he truly wanted to find. By the pond of an unknown past, the moon goddess and Hecate stayed here for several months. Under the guidance of the goddess of the magic net, an antique wooden house, constructed over 10,000 years, reappeared in the world, only to be hidden once again under the intricate mystery lock with her exquisite skills. During this period, a deity once roamed here in the form of a breeze, but ultimately left in vain amidst the interlacing strings of the magic net. The two goddesses thus built a dwelling here, reminiscing about the times of the last era. Time flowed on and several months passed in a flash. One day, a cry of joy rang out from the wooden house. With a flash of her figure, the void rippled. In an instant, Hecate set down the half-roasted fortunate game in her hand and appeared beside Selene. Upon entering the house, the gentle moonlight shone all around, and a bright white phantom moon appeared behind the goddess. Just one look, and Hecate knew that Selene had made some breakthrough in the practice of the meditation method, even resonating with certain moon phases in the spirit realm. No, not just certain ones, but almost all of them. As the natural moon goddess, Selene's affinity for the moon domain was unparalleled by anyone. Oh! Slowly opening her eyes, Selene was about to get up to share the joy of her breakthrough with her friend, but inadvertently bumped her head directly into Hecate's face. Rolling on the ground, the moon goddess raised her head angrily but then toned down under Hecate's innocent gaze. After a while, on an ancient path not far from the wooden house, wild grass and shrubs were everywhere, with no trace of the road's markings visible. Pulling Selene along here, Hecate didn't say what she intended to do. It wasn't until the moon goddess obediently stood beside her, and after a moment of silence, that she carefully drew a circle on the ground. Instantly, within the circle, time seemed to start flowing backward. The plants flourished and withered, eventually becoming seeds. The soil became moist, then dry again. Chapter 1061. Flower in the Mirror _2. Day after day, year after year. In the blink of an eye, the chronology here seems to have reversed for thousands of years. Gradually, a small footprint and the mark of someone lying down appeared here. Besides that, there was also the impression of something hard making a dent. What is this? Selene asked. This is the place where I once fell. Look, that footprint and the lying mark were left by me. I tripped over something hard here, then fell down. In the end, I took that troublesome thing that tripped me back. Pointing to the marks on the ground, Hecate said lightly. She took 2 steps forward, placed her foot on the old footprint, and pressed her hand on the dented mark. This is an exit that might not have existed originally. But when I picked it up here, this exit came into being. You have meditated more than once, and behind this entrance is the place you saw during your past meditations. There are many roads leading to the spirit realm in this world, but most stop at the first layer. Few can reach the second layer, and it's impossible to surpass the third layer. Only a few special exceptions, born for special reasons, remain and can reach the depths of the spirit realm. Enter from here, Find a spirit moon most closely associated with you. Selene, you have only one choice. In a low voice, a spark of light appeared in Hecate's palm, eventually illuminating the entire mark. In the next moment, a silver crack appeared before the two, and the girl in the red dress reached out, pulling the crack to a width sufficient for both to pass. In an instant, an intense spiritual aura emanated from the other side of the crack, revitalizing the moon goddess. Looking at the fissure in front of her, Selene felt a bit lost. I? Pointing at herself, the moon goddess hesitantly asked, Go in and choose a moon? Yes, you'll probably have another task afterward. I suggest you find a nymph elf who is willing to worship you, elevate her to be your servant, and grant her divinity to work for you. After all, you are the true moon goddess, not someone who forges a divine artifact with a portion of their godhood. As long as you are willing, the moon in your hands can be controlled perfectly without deviating from its orbit. Nodding slightly, Hecate looked at the hesitant Selene. She stepped back and pushed Selene towards the silver glowing crack. With a cry of surprise, the moon goddess fell into the gap, and Hecate followed suit. As the two entered, the crack restored, and everything returned to its original state. Only the shadow on the ground shifted slightly, recording the passage of time in this place. In reality, by the nameless pond, the past reflections hadn't ended yet. Heracles watched as two halos disappeared into a mosaic area, and then vanished. Like a real script, time in the reflections quickened at unimportant points and slowed at crucial moments. In a blink, the two halos emerged from the mosaic and returned to the present. It was clear that the silver-white halo became much stronger than before, the bright moonlight constantly surrounding her. Watching this, the great hero had an intuition. With the moon goddess entering, both the spirit realm and she herself were somehow enhanced in the domain of the moon. No, it wasn't an enhancement, but a completion. It was like things once separated finally coming together. They performed a function that was more than the sum of their parts. Baseless guesses flashed through his mind as Hecate's actions continued in the image. Returning to the mortal realm from the crack, the goddess of the magic net glanced at the marks on the ground. After a moment of hesitation, she displayed her magic and moved the pond she had been by earlier. The marks immersed in the water, as if buried in the sands of the past. The powerful mystery lock shone above the area, but Hecate didn't let the magic net string fully cover it. She merely took out a book, one that appeared as a mosaic to both Heracles and Prometheus. Flipping through the pages, a certain projection was summoned. The dreadful power of space sealed the mark within her body forever. After completing everything, the goddess of the magic net stepped back, letting Selene place her own seal here. The moon goddess didn't know what to do. She pondered for a long time, then finally hid the summoned projection within the moon's reflection in the pond, only visible at the right time, place, and angle. With all preparations done, Hecate seemed ready to leave. She waved her hand and summoned the chariot meant to pull the moon and left the ancient mount of the gods with the moon goddess. By the dry pond, the images ended. Turning his gaze to the dry pond beside him, Heracles knew this was where everything had happened. So that's how it was. Chapter 1062 Mirror Flower _3. The correct passage has been hidden. It is concealed within the moon in the water. And now, there is no water here, so naturally, no trace of it can be found. After a brief contemplation, the great hero asked Prometheus to create a stream here to fill the water pool. The forethinker did not refuse. Sacred power surged between his palms, and a divine art was easily cast from the hands of a true deity. Soon, the dry pool was full again, while Heracles watched the sky, waiting for the right time to come. 2 days passed quickly, and on this day he stood in the spot where Selene had once stood. When the full moon reached a specific angle, the great hero lowered his head to look at the moon's reflection in the pool. The moon in the sky and the moon in the water mirrored each other distantly, and in a mysterious way, it seemed as if a shackle had been released. The next moment, summoned by the demon queen and hidden in the moon's reflection by the moon goddess, something emerged. Looking at the moon's reflection on the water, Heracles was somewhat speechless. "What is that?" Andy asked. At the same time, only one person could see what was there. The great hero did not know how to respond. He merely stepped slightly aside, making way for this spot. "I don't know how to describe it either. See for yourself." Leaping from his pocket, the puppet gazed at the moon's reflection in midair. At first glance, it saw itself within. But just for a moment of astonishment, Andy identified it. A mirror? A mirror that sealed a flower. No, that's not a flower, it's a portal. But the space around it is distorted, so it looks like a flower to the naked eye. Haha. Moon in the water, flower in the mirror. I did not expect that the two goddesses actually had an artistic touch. However, Heracles, it seems you are indeed unfit for it now. You cannot surpass her seal, and in the mortal realm, I can't use my divine power to help you. Take a breath of its essence. That is the only thing you can do. The shadow of the Spleer mirror, if you want to break the space barrier it creates in the mortal realm, only it can do it itself. The divine artifact signifying the domain of space. Since the disappearance of the second-generation god king, no deity or divine artifact could stand its equal in this field. Though Andy knew this divine artifact's share in chaos space domain wasn't particularly high, there was no second space god in the mortal realm. From the beginning to the end, the world never truly granted the power of time and space to the deities. Otherwise, even in the first era, if Cronus could genuinely control over 70% of chaos time and space origin, he would have been an undisputed great divine power. Perhaps only Tartarus could rival him. However, through thousands of years, apart from the Abyss gaining a large amount of space authority due to the influx of source power from the alien realm, no deity had received such honor. Even the other primordial gods were likewise. They passively possessed part of the space power with the expansion of their domains. It might be the correct passage, but Heracles, it is certainly not left for you now. Having also looked into the moon's reflection in the mirror, Prometheus said, "You seek to go to the all-spirit realm, to summon the souls of the dead before the well of reincarnation. According to the Purgatory book, there is also a projection of the Spleer mirror there. When you find it, you might be able to open this correct path, if everything you foresee comes true and you indeed need to go through here in the future. As for now, I fear you won't succeed." Nodding slightly, the great hero trusted their words. But he still tried it himself to see if he could reach that portal so close at hand. However, the result was as they said, moon in the water, flower in the mirror, seemingly within reach, yet under the influence of the power of space, the distance between Heracles and them was like an abyss. All right, indeed, to counter power, only another power will do. Deities might be limited in the mortal realm, but divine artifacts face much fewer restrictions. Shaking his head slowly, the great hero stepped back. As Andy suggested, he captured the essence of the divine artifact. This was a clue, one that would guide his way in the future. Standing still by the pool, time continued to flow. Chapter 1063. The Heavenly Empress's Garden. The silver light rises, piercing through the crevice between the starry sky and the mortal realm. From the star shuttle, looking at the boundless ruins of Mount Othrys, even when gazed upon from the sky, Heracles felt an inexplicable sense of emotion. The passage of time, the mottled years. No matter how glorious and great the civilization and sanctity, all must bow before the eternal time. Golden humanity is like this, Mother Earth and Heavenly Father are like this, and so is the divine king who once ruled Mount Othrys. Then what about Zeus? How long will his reign last? And on that day, will he accept it calmly, or struggle unwillingly? No answer, for the future is the hardest to predict. Withdrawing his gaze, the great hero continued to steer the star shuttle westward. Thanks to this alchemy construct from Silver Moon City, without it, the group would probably not have even reached Olympia by now. His next target was the Garden of Heavenly Empress Hera, located above the Western Sea. Dionysus, what do you know about the Heavenly Empress's garden? On the road, seeing his partner burdened with worries, Heracles broke the silence. Before leaving Mount Othrys, after the great hero defeated the Sphinx, the god of West Wind arrived belatedly, though tasked with issuing the mission. Yet, under the gaze of the Caucasus divine eagle's pupil, Heracles unexpectedly discovered that the person who arrived didn't seem to be the true Zephyrus. Not caring too much about it, he silently watched the performance. Until the last step, when the other spoke of the next mission, the great hero felt somewhat surprised. Steal the golden apples from the Heavenly Empress's orchard. It was almost identical to his original goal. Since that was the case, he had no reason to refuse. He agreed immediately, and both sides were very satisfied. But from that day on, Dionysus seemed a bit torn. He probably received some additional task, to be precise, something for you to do. However, during this journey, this young man could no longer use you without batting an eye, or maybe he never had that ability. In any case, it's up to you how to resolve it. I'm just here to clear some doubts for you. The prescient Titan told him this, and unsurprisingly, Heracles chose to confront the problem directly. Indeed, when asked about the Heavenly Empress's garden, Dionysus seemed visibly relieved. Well, of course I know. I read about it in ancient texts. Heracles, speaking of which, do you know about the golden apple tree? I've heard of it. Nodding slightly, the great hero shared his knowledge. It originates from the seed of everything in the life phase, taking root and sprouting in the hands of Mother Earth. Symbolizing life's utmost creation of the supreme plant, it ultimately produces the peerless treasure even the gods rarely see. This is the golden apple tree as I know it. But as far as I know, the one belonging to the Heavenly Empress doesn't produce true golden apples. It was a branch gifted by Mother Earth to the three brothers, who then cultivated it. Typhon's offspring, the 100-headed dragon Ladon guards there. Subdued by the gods, it eternally protects Hera's garden. Correct. Nodding in acknowledgement, after much hesitation, Dionysus finally spoke. Just one thing you got wrong. The 100-headed dragon Ladon was never subdued by the gods. To be more precise, there's nothing in this world that can subdue it. From the very beginning, its story was a lie. On that day when Typhon fell, deities hunted its descendants on Earth. Ladon was just one of the most ordinary among them, but at the moment of the demon ancestor's death, it and its brothers received the legacy from the source of their bloodline. From that moment, the gods were no longer its match, and it roamed free upon the earth. Not even all the deities on Olympus together could defeat it. not because it was invincible, but because it resembled the king of all monsters too much. If Typhon was the 100-headed dragon serpent, the Hydra was its undying body, and Ladin was its unyielding wrath. From its father, it inherited none of those special abilities, only Typhon's burning rebellion against fate and rules. In an unrepeatable coincidence, this formidable demon transformed that wrath into its abnormal power, gaining an ability the gods both envied and feared, the avoidance of suppression by worldly law. The mortal realm thus became its dominion, capable of displaying true godlike power even under the strictest suppression by the laws of the earth. Yet far at sea, its strength grew even stronger. With the shift in strength and weakness, positions were reversed. As long as it didn't recklessly tread upon Olympus, the gods had no choice but to give way before it, if, on that day, the king of all gods himself intervened. No one knows why he singled out Ladin, perhaps due to dissatisfaction from repeatedly being rejected by Typhon, or maybe for other reasons. In any case, under the power of the king of all gods, Ladin was finally utterly defeated. It couldn't resist the divine king's might and was ultimately imprisoned in Hera's orchard as a gift to the empress. This irate prisoner, an unstoppable lunatic, indiscriminately kills any creature daring to enter its territory, thereby indirectly safeguarding the place's security. Chapter 1064. The Heavenly Empress's Garden _2. And so, as the years went by, the prisoner became the overseer of the garden in the songs of poets. Apart from the gods and itself, no one knew the origin of the matter. Like a song of poetry, Dionysus narrated the legend of the 100-headed dragon. Before him, Heracles frowned slightly. By now, he could roughly guess what the other was about to say. Excluding the fact that he also needed to obtain the golden apple, the god of the west wind probably never expected him to complete such a task in the first place. After all, an enemy that could display divine power in the mortal realm, and even more so in the deep sea, was nearly invincible. This wasn't a matter of will or faith. Perhaps cunning was his only path, and the gods had already laid out this smooth road. The 100-headed dragon Ladin sounds terrifying and difficult to combat. With an unchanged expression, the great hero asked, "So Dionysus, do you have any ideas about this?" "Of course." Nodding slightly, Dionysus said in a deep voice, "In the entire mortal realm, no one or god can defeat Ladin. Other than the divine king and the primordial gods who live with the world, the 100-headed dragon is an invincible existence. Yet to obtain the apple from the heavenly empress's orchard, it is an unavoidable guardian. Fortunately, nothing in the world is absolute. There is a deity who, due to a special duty, received special leniency from the law." Turning to the head of the star shuttle, Dionysus gazed at the distant earth below him. Although this was guided by the will of the father god, it was not detrimental to Heracles either. The young deity convinced himself. He didn't want to harm his friend, just as he didn't want to see Amon's death. You know, if Ladin is the only demon who can display divine power in the mortal realm, then he is the only sacred being who can wield divine authority. At the end of the sky, at the edge of the sea, Heracles, killing the 5 great demons made you a hero, and with your wisdom you should have guessed by now. Even the children in the mortal realm have heard his myth from their parents. Yes, I've indeed heard of him. With a light nod, the great hero certainly knew him. The only entity that could display divine power in the mortal realm, the ancient Titan deity, the vanguard general of the second-generation divine king, the skyholder Atlas. That's right. If it's him, no matter how powerful Ladin is, he is not his match. Gazing through the outer shell of the star shuttle, Heracles looked towards the western edge of the earth. At a sufficiently distant place, everything appeared blurry, except for that towering giant shadow. Atlas, son of Iapetus, brother of Prometheus. He carried the symbol of holding up the sky by 1/3, so the laws of the present world never acted upon him. Even the furious sea emperor Poseidon never violated his dignity. So that's how it is. Someone wanted him to meet the skyholder, to obtain something or an answer from him, because he had stood here as a titan for too long, and the chaos world did not need an ancient god who looked level at Olympus. I understand. After a moment of silence, the great hero slowly said, "Skyholder Atlas, the titan who holds the power. I've long been in spiritual communion with him. Since this journey cannot avoid his existence, I will go and see him myself." Swish, swish, swish. In the west of the earth, the endless waves rose and fell. The circumterrestrial river was far from here. The sea god did not want to approach here. Carrying the heavens on his shoulders, with the sun and moon above. For thousands of years, like a statue, Atlas stood at the utmost boundary of the sky, always silent. Following his gaze, the shadow of Olympus disappeared in the shadow of the ancient mount of the gods' remains, as if the shadow of the Titans always entwined the newly born divine court. Beside Atlas, a tall bronze pillar connected the sky and earth. An incomparably bright spiritual light rose from the bottom, while the pure blue sky light pressed down. The two ultimately converged at the middle of the bronze pillar, exploding into a brilliant light that mortals could not see. The sky and the ocean, two colossal forces that could gather great symbols, collided here, canceling out each other's accumulated frenzy with that small figure at the end. Suspended above the west heaven, Triton had long forgotten how much time had passed. Even when Typhon's chaos temporarily disrupted the chronology of chaos, causing time among stars, oceans, and lands to no longer be unified, his sentence still hadn't ended. Day by day, month by month, suffering in agony, Triton had long forgotten how far he was from freedom. He only knew he had gone from wailing to cursing, from cursing to silence, from silence to praying, from praying to despair. Again and again, year after year, no one had ever paid attention to him. As if forgotten by heaven and earth, and here was his long coffin. Swish, step step, stepping on the sea, feeling the water brush against her toes. Without expression, Pandora, dragging her black dress, walked silently on the western sea. The giant god like the sky and earth, the bronze pillar reaching up high. By her side, Gaia was nowhere to be seen, only Epimetheus accompanied her. Step step. So, my dearest husband, respectful afterthinker, child of the Titan god, as you can see, is he the target of my journey, Triton, son of the sea god? Forgive me for being blunt, but I do not sense anything extra from him, whether disaster or any other unnecessary existence. Her voice faint, seemingly questioning, yet there was never a trace of emotion. Pandora stood silently on the sea, like a corpse. Beside her, Epimetheus only smiled. Like Pandora, he could do nothing now. Yes, it is he, Triton, son of the sea god. Once upon a time, you were the cause of human disasters, and he, the executor of Bronze's destruction. As for his father, Sea Emperor Poseidon, the Earthshaker god who wields the powers of tsunami, storm, and earthquake, he is the god closest to chaos and natural disasters. According to the original plan, Mother Earth wanted you to pose as a mortal fallen into the water due to a storm, thereby gaining the Sea Emperor's favor, but now he is no longer here. He has fallen into the abyss and can't even execute his godhood. So, in the world now, the closest to him is Triton, who is enduring endless suffering. To send his nominal wife to seduce Poseidon, in the afterthinker's mouth, was as ordinary as a dog barking at humans. Gazing at the tall bronze pillar, Epimetheus admired the majesty and power of the ancient god. 1,000 years or 10,000. He did not remember, but the bronze pillar did. It was soaked with the blood of the sea god's son, entwined between sky and sea. Even in the wear of years, it managed to bisect a thread of sky-holding imagery. To acquire Triton, this bronze pillar was equally an unavoidable step. Silent, Epimetheus looked back to the sky. Before coming, the earth told him, there would be someone favored by destiny and the will of the divine king arriving here. She did not care if the process was difficult. She only wanted the final result, to have Pandora take everything from Triton. Ah, what a fine thought. Just Mother Earth. I wonder if you've reclaimed the wisdom you lost, dancing gracefully on the edge of the blade, or long been battered and bruised, only preserving your life by the world's whimsy. I may not know, but you should be clear. Continuing to smile, Epimetheus. Chapter 1065, The Center of Attention. Passing through the high peaks of clouds, falling from the edge of the stars. The Silver Alchemy Long Shuttle lived up to its promise, carrying a group of people across the waves of the Western Sea. Unlike the East Sea, perhaps it was due to Triton, a symbol of shame, or perhaps due to the dread of the Titan who supports the sky, neither Oceanus, the god of the ocean, nor Nereus, son of the ancient sea god destined to become the principal god, had any intention to expand their realms here. Poseidon least of all. In the decade-long war during the last epoch, he had also fought on the ground against this Titan who wielded the power of strength. Even back then, when Atlas had yet to bear the burden of supporting the sky, his power left a lasting impression on the Sea Emperor. If possible, he had no desire to provoke this obstinate ancient god. Thus, all along the journey, Heracles did not encounter any mighty marine creatures. Even the sea monsters birthed by the father of monsters tacitly steered clear of this ocean. Opening a window from the star shuttle, the great hero faintly glimpsed the blossoming flowers on the holy island. The golden apple tree was planted there, guarded by the 100-headed dragon Ladon. Just remotely sensing that powerful aura, the few strange artifacts on Heracles, inherited from the son of Typhon, trembled slightly. A loud dragon's roar echoed from the distance, shattering the clouds over thousands of miles. A formidable demon seemed to sense something and wanted to come check personally. However, the seal left by the divine king could not be shaken. Just as when the first-generation god king imprisoned the Titans and the second-generation god king confined the sun, Ladon's resistance was futile. The chain of order shook slightly, then firmly suppressed it down. Although its ability could exempt part of the law's restraint, part is not all. Faced with the order suppression personally invoked by Zeus with the power of royal authority, even if it could exempt most of it, the remaining part was enough to firmly limit Ladon's range. It's impossible to force through now. Even if I could borrow your strength, I can't resist the world's suppression of divine power. Hearing is false, seeing is true. After personally confirming the result, the great hero no longer held unrealistic hopes. Maneuvering the star shuttle to turn, Heracles headed towards the two very apparent supporting pillar stones in the west. Although he did not know that in the original trajectory, he obtained the golden apples with Atlas's help, the great hero still looked forward to it. Instinct told him that meeting the ancient titan might yield some different gains during this journey. Rustle. Over the sea surface, silver light flashed. The son of the sea god knew nothing of this, deeply entrenched in pain and despair. He had no time to pay attention to the external movements. Circling around the copper pillar a few times, gazing at the power of heaven and sea interwoven at one point, the great hero felt deeply shocked. Not by the vastness of the sky and the ocean, but by Triton's intact life. In theory, the copper pillar, intertwined with forces enough to achieve a great domain, should have collapsed if not for relying on a hint of symbolic support. Yet Triton being able to survive until now was simply because of the primordial deity's great power. From Dionysus's words, Prometheus also learned part of the truth about what happened in the mortal realm after he was captured. For example, Triton came bearing the divine artifact, causing floods in the mortal realm, or being defeated by a single word from the ancient god, suspended upside down above the west heaven for 7,000 years. Clearly, the power contained in a word from a primordial deity far exceeded this. Although it punished the offender, it also sustained his life for thousands of years. Silent and speechless, the group did not disturb the suffering divine child, but instead flew towards the giant god nearby. From the giant god's knee, they flew to the titan's face. 9 layers of clouds pulled back behind them. Only at such a position could they look directly at the mount of the god's summit. Walking out from the star shuttle, Heracles looked at the giant god who seemed to embody the heavens and earth in front of him, loudly stating his intention. Honorable Titan, Atlas, son of Iapetus, I am Heracles from the mortal realm. My friends and I want to take the apples from the heavenly queen's garden, but the 100-headed dragon blocks the way. Mighty and brave, unyielding and resilient Titan deity, I hope to receive your help. If you are willing to lend a hand, I will do my utmost to fulfill your desire. His voice shook the heavens, and the great hero's expression was earnest. He hoped to persuade this ancient god to help him, and was already prepared to accomplish something for him first. Yet at this moment, unbeknownst to him, more than one gaze was fixed on this end of the west heaven. Behind Dionysus, the divine king sat high on the mount of the gods, silently watching here. They had once fought fiercely, and Atlas would surely recognize his bloodline. If he sincerely aided him without expecting repayment, Zeus would generously forgive his sins, even willing to marry one of his daughters to him and let him replace the yet-to-return Nereus, becoming the new principal god of Olympus. If he outright refused, then he must find a way to deal with him. Presently, the supporting pillar stone cannot be left outside the divine king's control. If he chose neither and decided to compete with his son, then Zeus would tolerate him for a while longer. After all, compared to his previous inaction, this was considered progress, wasn't it? Deep within the earth, beneath boundless earth veins, behind Pandora and Epimetheus, Gaia's voluptuous body was wrapped in a blood-red long skirt. The ancient earth god's eyes were filled with satisfaction. Chapter 1066. The Center of Attention Part 2. Beside her, a crystal-clear twig trembled slightly, as if speaking in a language that ordinary people could not understand. Listening closely, though she couldn't fully comprehend it, Gaia still felt greatly rewarded. Like Heracles, though Mother Earth had no idea who this person was, after the disaster in the starry sky, a vivid painting formed by ruby-like leaves gently fell in front of her. With just one glance, the deity who commanded the earth directly locked onto the figure in the painting and detected the aura of Zeus' bloodline. She was puzzled at the time, but Gaia ultimately made her choice. Until this moment, though she hadn't fully understood, the gathering of so many special existences together must hold some secret. As I thought, by regaining my strength, I have also regained my wisdom. Outer God, I will remember your merit. Nodding with satisfaction, looking at this outer god whose power alone could create an ancient evil being, Gaia merely smiled, not at all fearing the opponent's ability to corrode everything. Joking, she was the Mother Earth. Unless the entire mortal realm was destroyed and shattered, even if the other side worked for 1 billion years, it wouldn't be able to corrupt the center of the present world. By the shore of the East Sea in Athens, at the foot of the towering Mage Tower, Star Godamon was reading a book as usual. Despite almost finishing Hermes' collection, he had never shown any longing for the outside world. In fact, to him, though the entire Chaos world was dazzling and colorful, nothing could be more interesting than this human alchemist. Especially the vague ideas the other had put forward, even though they had never communicated face-to-face, Amon had gleaned some understanding from the details. Concrete, gathering others to become oneself, cultivating truth through falsehood. How fascinating this path was. He wouldn't interfere with the other. On the contrary, he would try his best to help Hermes succeed. After all, if his schemes on the other side succeeded, he would naturally need a powerful divine artifact, one that could influence situations and change strengths in the hands of great divine power. In this regard, Hermes' future true masterpiece would be quite good. Tilting his head slightly, Star Godamon looked westwards over the earth. It shouldn't take too long. The divine king of this world is too impatient and too naive, but it's normal. Young people are eager, which is why I like them. Just counting the time, isn't he about to return? TCH. Then I'll make a simple bet, I'll bet on his victory this round, but of course he wins first, then I'll win. It doesn't matter if I can't win. In any case, I won't lose. Returning his gaze, star god Amon shrugged slightly. No more thinking about it, just thinking makes him a bit impatient. Lately, through some unique means of his own, Amon had also uncovered some secrets about the transition of the previous epic in Chaos. Nobody knew what exactly he inferred from this, or what he learned. Over the Western Sea, Atlas silently faced the gaze cast from the Mount of the Gods. After a moment, the Divine King withdrew his gaze, and Atlas lowered his head slightly, looking at the existence in front of him. The first to enter his vision was not Heracles, but the lean figure of Prometheus and the lurking Epimetheus beneath the sea. A complex emotion flashed in his eyes, and finally he shifted his gaze back. Is it you, the hero of the mortal realm? Heracles, the name relayed by the demons, unexpectedly was favored by his two brothers as well. On his person, Atlas will find a way to redemption, but not today. When the end of this epic comes, everything will be settled. He will personally raise the war flag and lead the charge at the forefront of the army. Heracles, I know you. You are the son of the Divine King, a pathetic wretch deceived from beginning to end. The voice thundered, like 1,000 warriors beating drums in the sky. Feeling the sudden oppression descending from the Mount of the Gods, Titan sneered. Feeling angry that he knew a demigod's story, knew the cause of his mother's death, not afraid of the other's threats, but considering certain matters, Atlas ultimately did not reveal the truth he knew. But it doesn't matter. No matter who you are, I understand your intention, and I can kill Ladin, uproot everything in Hera's golden apple garden. But I won't do it because this is your task, your destiny, hero of the mortal realm. I can give you the power to defeat formidable enemies, but you must agree to my conditions. Mortal, do you accept? I accept. Wanting to ask what it means to be a pathetic wretch deceived by others. But the hero eventually held back his question. After years of tempering, he gradually understood one truth. Some things, knowing them in advance is just the root of disaster. When he ascends to the spirit realm, all the past will eventually be revealed to him. Tell me, what is your condition? As long as it's within my power, I will definitely fulfill it for you. Nodding slightly like a mountain falling, Atlas held up the sky and spoke his condition. Since you've made your choice, then listen carefully. Ever since the collapse of the Mount of the Gods, the sky tilted northwest, and I have held it up here. Countless years have passed, long enough for me to lose track of time. No one is born wanting to support the heavens. I too have days of weariness, so I hope to have a successor, someone to support the sky until the end of this epic. So I am the one you've chosen? Shouted the hero, frowning slightly. I am willing to agree with you to support the sky for the remaining time of this epic. However, I still have my own matters to attend to, and I don't even know if I have the capability. No worries, I don't need you to replace me right now. As for capability, slightly turning his head, Titan spoke lightly. That is your problem to consider. I can lend you the power to support the sky, granting you unparalleled authority and responsibility, but the precondition is that you truly have the qualification. Not everyone can support the heavens. Even among deities, very few are qualified to bear this burden. Even if entrusted with the emblem of supporting the sky, they would be crushed by it. So, mortal, before seeking my help, ask yourself, do you have the ability? Saying no more, Atlas closed his eyes. Following the direction he had previously looked towards, Heracles knew this was the test left for him. There, the bronze column connecting heaven and earth stood unmoved by the sea and storm, its existence itself stabilizing the sky through the sea, and the sea through the sky. On it was a trace of the symbol of supporting the sky, passed from Atlas' shoulders, a result of millennia of scouring by two forces. The Titan's meaning was clear. To prove he could bear the burden of supporting the sky, he must first lift this pillar that suppressed the divine child. Chapter 1067. Carrying the heavenly pillar to cross the northern sea. Lift this bronze pillar? Looking at the heavenly pillar, although he didn't know how heavy it was, Heracles could roughly guess. If this pillar were placed on the ground, even if all the mortals in the world worked together, they wouldn't be able to shake it in the slightest. Simple weight meant nothing to it. Lifting it meant being able to lift a part of the sky. Even with his usual confidence, the great hero didn't dare to be certain of success. I will lift it, he spoke calmly. Under the gaze of Prometheus and Dionysus, Heracles leapt down, jumping toward the pillar connecting the sky and sea. Whoosh! Free fall, the wind howled in his ears. Through layers of clouds, the deep, boundless sea drew closer to the great hero. Falling endlessly from the sky, the air felt like steel blades. At a certain moment, the great hero's form halted in midair. Not far from him, the demigod with a human body and fishtail was bound by illusory chains, shackled before Heracles. Taking a step forward, the great hero tried to catch the son of the sea god's attention. Yet it seemed time had eroded Triton's will. He showed no reaction to the outside world. Shaking his head helplessly, Heracles continued approaching. Vaguely, as he drew nearer, Heracles seemed to hear something. Though not clear-headed at this moment, Triton's lips kept murmuring. It was his obsession, hard to forget even now. There. Kill. Come. If you have the guts, kill me. Come. Kill me. The voice suddenly surged. The divine child with a human body and fishtail snapped his eyes open. His blood-red eyes stared fixedly at the human before him, as if mistaking him for another presence. Mortal, it's you. Ha 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 ha. Survivor of the Golden Age, you're still alive? You're still alive. You're still alive. Ah ha 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 ha. You have the wrong person. Frowning slightly, Heracles tried to correct him. But before him, Triton simply didn't believe it. His eyes could no longer see clearly. Even though the demigod's body coursed with scorching divine blood, he was still inevitably heading towards demise. Yet this dazzling and blinding will only that human had possessed. Hee. Mortal, did you come to mock me? Do you think you can mock me? I, the son of the sea god, am not like those old and decayed fellows of yours. Mortals have their mortal deaths, the deity race also have deaths unique to them. This is something you can never attain. In a hoarse and frenzied shout, Triton raised his neck high, looking at the golden human in his heart. Come kill me. Only by killing me, would you have to stay here in my place? Era ha 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 ha. Stay here. But you're simply not capable of that. Because even to be punished, only the deity race merits that right. Crack. A crisp sound echoed beside Triton. The high-pitched voice faltered for a moment, but Heracles did not stop. As he reached out and snapped one of the rule chains binding the son of the sea god, the great hero felt an inexplicable constraint. It seemed as if, just as Triton had said, if he really detached the other's life from this bronze pillar, in whatever form, he must replace his existence. This was inevitable, for over thousands of years. As the first symbol propping up the sky merged with the pillar, its very existence also affected the stability of the sky. If you couldn't lift it like Atlas, then you could only support it with your life like Triton. Only the son of the sea god could stir the seas, but mortals couldn't influence the law. So Triton was right, mortals didn't even have the qualification to be punished here. Yet Heracles' actions did not cease. He merely continued to reach out and snap another chain. Chapter 1068. Carrying the heavenly pillar to cross the northern sea _2. Crack, crack, crack. One sound after another over and over again. With vacant eyes, Triton could only see a vague figure flashing before him. The chains on his body peeled away inch by inch, and the son of the sea god felt unprecedented relaxation. Yet in this moment, he didn't feel happy. Instead, he felt a sense of shame. What are you doing? He asked. What are you doing? Speak. Speak. Answer me. He shouted loudly, but no one responded. On the bronze pillar, all that Triton received were the sounds of breaking chains and the steadily passing weight. Time ticked away bit by bit, and the chains became increasingly sparse. Conversely, with each passing moment, pressure shifted onto Heracles. However, for some reason, as the weight of the sky accompanied by the symbolic support transferred, the great hero not only didn't feel burdened but felt even lighter. It seemed that as the sky pressed upon him, some other force was leaving him. The more things pressed against him, the closer he felt to something he had previously been unable to touch. Gradually, around Heracles, his past deeds began to flash one by one, starting with battling the giant lion in the mountains and ending with vanquishing the Sphinx through wisdom. In a fleeting moment, the great hero reached an understanding. These concepts were both false and true. If he were a god, like a war god, with the godhood of war shrouded over him and the world's laws regarding war under his control, he would theoretically have the right to change, expand and perfect them in his name. Just as Themis legislated for the present world, if the war god could drive some change related to war to appear in the world, his godhood might gain the world's favor, leading to an elevation of his intrinsic limits. Conversely, if he couldn't change the world, he could still perform major deeds under its influence that matched the laws of war, potentially broadening his godhood's concept and making it stronger. But for thousands of years, few managed the former. Occasionally, some gods achieved the latter, but compared to their godhood's original strength, this growth seemed insignificant. Like the major deeds Heracles performed on his journey, if he were a devout follower of Ares, this feedback could increase the origin of Ares's war godhood by an amount equivalent to a divine power level 2 to level 3, because his actions undoubtedly expanded the concepts related to battle, technique, virtue, and war wisdom. If these deeds were done directly by the war god, the feedback could even add directly to his godhood by a divine power level 5, approaching level 6, elevating the intrinsic limits of his godhood. However, this growth seemed significant but, in the powerful divine power domain, was negligible. It couldn't even elevate the godhood's level by a tier. Moreover, because of the existence of faith, the current divine power of the gods already exceeded the limits of their innate divine power, so they couldn't feel this enhancement. Therefore, for the gods, achieving such major deeds was unthinkable. Even for gods like Ares, accomplishing similar deeds would be nearly impossible. The harvest was disproportionate to the effort, resulting in no one putting their focus on it anymore. Only Helios, sealed in the starry sky, took a shortcut. He skipped the process of broadening the concept and directly used appropriate parts of the alien realm sun concept to expand Chaos's concept of sun. This was also a pathway, although its probability of occurrence was minuscule, requiring more coincidence and luck. So broadening godhood doesn't solely rely on the world's enhancement. It can also be intentionally guided by deities to gain the world's favor, which is one of the reasons for their existence. Naturally, since it's the reason for deities' existence, it also proves that all this is meant for them to understand. Because only those with godhood who can access the Sea of Origin can have their major deeds and epic sagas accepted by the world's laws, thereby producing substantial effects. Even if mortals achieved similar deeds, they wouldn't be counted as their own. The achievements of believers belong to gods. How much deities can gain depends on the believer's faith. Faith gods' achievements belong to their divinity. Precisely through this method, concepts released by the civilization steel gradually fill its initial framework. The once empty twilight finally gained healing-related abilities. The concept created by the civilization steel gradually broadened through the unintentional exploration of faith gods, gaining real abilities within the world's internal cycle. Believers to gods, faith gods to the civilization steel, just like gods to the world. In the end, deities are merely users of godhood, not its owners. Except for the birth of new gods, it has seldom stripped gods of their godhood, giving them the illusion that divine authority belongs to them. However, nothing in the world is certain. Even deities are part of the world. From beginning to end, perhaps only the primordial gods and the master of the realm can resist the world's rules to some extent with the characteristics of the creation domain. But these things are irrelevant to Heracles at this moment. Shadows flashed around him and past deeds formed concepts. Whether it's war, victory, wisdom, or something else, these concepts could enhance the power of those godhoods. Yet, whichever direction they turn, none of this enhances Heracles' own power. Because he isn't a god, he doesn't have a godhood of his own as a key to the Sea of Origin, allowing the forces of the world's internal cycle to act on these concepts and find a common point centered around godhood, then merge into the godhood, enhancing its intrinsic limit. At this moment, he is merely a human, even though the great hero already possesses the ability to bear godhood. This is the mortal limitation, the greatest barrier of the divine epic. Long exhale, Heracles unwound the last chain, and Triton finally detached from the bronze pillar supporting the heavens. Lying dazed among the clouds, he felt bewildered for a moment. Ignoring Triton's thoughts, the great hero looked at the bronze pillar before him. Countless chains surged towards him, attempting to bind him to the bronze pillar, yet their efforts were futile. For a moment, unable to take action, Heracles wasn't sure how to lift this gigantic bronze pillar. Stepping forward, the great hero placed his hand upon it, sensing the last thread of symbolism for supporting the heavens still within the pillar. "How should I lift you?" his will asked. The bronze pillar didn't respond. It simply allowed that thread of symbolism to merge with him. Thus, in a daze, Heracles felt himself transform into a towering mountain, eternally standing at the Earth's center point. He was the highest mountain in the world, closest to the sky. When the last thread of symbolism became complete in his consciousness, the bronze pillar remained unattainably high. But in the great hero's eyes, it was merely a piece of indestructible metal subjected to thousands of years of sea and sky pounding, a shell he could freely manipulate. "Smaller, I can't hold you," he said. As he said, it was done by the bronze pillar. The sea trembled, clouds shook. The bronze pillar, rooted here for thousands of years, rose and then slowly shrank in Heracles' hands. Chapter 1069. The third puzzle piece. Northern lands. Mount Nysa. On the continuous mountain range, the traces once left by Typhon were faintly visible. At the cold and lofty peak, the temple of the three Moirai sisters faced the cold winds of the northern lands. For hundreds of years, the three fates executed their authority here, weaving the tapestry of all lives. But today is not like the past. Now on Mount Nysa, the once busy figures were no longer to be seen. Atropos and Lachesis were long gone, leaving behind only the youngest of the three sisters. Clotho, the weaver of the thread of life, also the only one not afflicted by the poison of fate. Her part was always borne by her two elder sisters. She only needed to sit on Mount Nysa, completing her inborn duty. Even now, with Lachesis sealed, the backlash of fate still did not come to her. For unlike Atropos, the goddess who measured fate had no opportunity to react. Her time was fixed at that moment. Including herself, she and the poison of fate were sealed behind that portal, leaving Clotho unaware of her fate. Thus, sitting alone on the boulder at the mountain top, Clotho, in the form of a girl, faced away from the center of the earth. It was the place where humans flourished, where the two fates had once visited, but she did not wish to see them. With a sense of avoidance, Clotho gazed blankly at the cold northern sea. "Sister, have you found the mastermind you were looking for?" Her pupils dilated. The goddess did not focus on anything in particular but took in everything with a blank, clueless gaze. She did not know what she should do now, or rather what she could do. What is that?" After a long silence, accompanied only by the sound of the wind. However, at a certain moment it seemed Clotho discovered something. Even without using her rights to observe fate, she could still sense that a great shift seemed to be happening. Boundless malice came from the void, But this time it was different from the past. Threads of black energy seemed to seep through the shadow left by Lachesis on Fate, reflecting onto her. This should not have happened. As long as the Fates willed it, such backlash was something they could withstand. Compared to the past Atropos, Lachesis had yet to reach her limit, nor had she willingly given up bearing the burden. Feeling that boundless evil, that deep-seated fear, Clotho knew that her second sister must also be in trouble. She had at least lost her consciousness and could no longer sense the tides of fate. Whoosh! Instinctively turning her head, the goddess looked towards the west. There, the boiling fate seemed to be burning, and a shadow towering to the skies thrust up. The shadow pressed down, bringing with it the oppression of the material world, the torrents of fate, carrying the weight of a sky as it smashed from the west heaven into the northern sea. Boom! No sound came, as great sound is silent, great form is invisible. Trembling, Clotho embraced herself with her arms, watching as the northern sea was struck, feeling only darkness before her eyes. In that moment, countless fates were altered, and this was just the beginning. The garden, that garden laden. Biting her lip lightly, Clotho tried to stand but found her legs completely powerless. Even though, at this moment, the backlash of fate had not truly fallen upon her, she knew. If this was a war, then before it had even begun, they had already lost. Western Sea, the waters near Atlas. Submerged in the water, Epimetheus glanced at the son of the sea god falling from the sky, choosing to continue observing the trajectory of that strike. Simple, direct, without any flourish. That strike carried the weight of a piece of the sky. Whether man or god, without that qualification, it was like facing a finger falling from the sky god. As the strike fell, the northern sea shook, the waves touched the clouds, and the ripples calmed the sea for miles. A trace of astonishment flashed in Afterthinker's eyes, understanding that if that strike was aimed at him, it could have taken half his life. From now on, the entire earth, across both divine and mortal realms, perhaps only a few could match the mortal hero who was already akin to a god in battle. If given a while longer, once he inherited the power lent by Atlas, even with all gods regaining their divine power, they would have to bow before him. For in terms of battle prowess, the titan who governed strength was unparalleled. Millennia of supporting the sky and the world's increasing power had placed him at the zenith of divine strength, almost unbeatable. With his aid, neither the hundred-headed dragon Typhon nor all gods could wreak havoc before mankind. Teske, this is destiny. Pandora, you held fate for so long. Why couldn't you be like him? Shaking his head and sighing, Epimetheus' gaze returned to Triton who had fallen into the sea. To die in the hands of the witch holding the magic jar was probably your destined fate. The death you sought has now come for you. Who knows if heroes are born from destiny, or if only heroes can bear destiny? Never mind, either way, I can't be that hero. Chapter 1070. The third puzzle piece _2. Pandora, go and make good use of Triton's remaining life. Poseidon is no longer here, and the trident has left the material world. The tsunami, storm, earthquake he once controlled are now without a master, causing the laws to be in chaos, and soon, two beings capable of wielding divine power in the mortal realm will engage in a fierce battle over the sea. This is your best opportunity. It's just... sigh. With another sigh, Epimetheus finally fell silent, his gaze drifting towards the sky one last time. Pandora kept a deadpan expression, ignoring him. However, it was she who was truly valued by Mother Earth. Compared to her, he was merely an afterthought. Heracles wouldn't even know who he was, and yet he seemed to be the center of this era, qualified to uphold even the sky. Even his brother, whom he had always looked down upon, had now broken free and was following this great hero of the mortal world, perhaps finding a new turning point. What does this prove? It proves that sometimes it's not that one doesn't try hard enough, but that luck has never been on one side. If he and Pandora's positions were swapped, Epimetheus wouldn't care about Mother Earth's control. As long as he still held value, there would always be opportunities to act, just like his marriage to Pandora under Zeus' arrangement. But unfortunately, when you don't even have value, there's really nothing you can do. Shaking his head in the dark, the Afterthinker was about to turn and leave this place to Pandora alone. But suddenly, it was as if he remembered something, and he looked towards where his brother was once again. Prometheus' disguise could fool others, but not Epimetheus. His brother's style and habits were too familiar. However, who was that person beside him? Zeus, man. Could it be that, after all this, I still have to rely on this divine king to break this deadlock? Slightly narrowing his eyes, Epimetheus did not show any outward reaction, merely noting Dionysus' presence in his heart. He was unsure of what he should do now, or rather, what he could do. What is that? After a long silence, with only the sound of the wind, Clotho seemed to have noticed something. Even without using her right to observe fate, she could sense another massive deviation occurring. Boundless malice emanated from the void, but this time it was different from before. Threads of black gas seemed to seep through Lachesis' shadow left on Fate, reflecting onto her. This should have been impossible. The fates could usually withstand such backlash if they wished. Compared to Atropos of old, Lachesis had not yet reached her limit, and she had no intention of relinquishing her burden. So, feeling the boundless evil and the profound terror, Clotho knew something had likely happened to her second sister. She had at least lost her consciousness, unable to perceive the tides of fate actively. Whoosh! Instinctively turning her head, the goddess gazed westward. There, fate was boiling as if it were on fire, and a towering black shadow pierced the skies. The shadow pressed down, carrying the weight of the material world, the turbulence of fate's river, and the heaviness of a segment of the sky, crashing from the western heaven unto the northern sea. Boom! No sound was heard, for great noise is silent, and great form is shapeless. Clotho's arms trembled as she clasped them together, gazing at the northern sea struck by the shadow, darkness clouding her vision. In that instant countless fates were altered, and this was just the beginning. The garden, that garden laden. Biting her lip lightly, Clotho tried to stand, but found her legs devoid of strength. Though fate's backlash had yet to fall upon her, she knew, if this was a war, they had already lost before it even began. Crash, crash, Western Sea near Atlas Domain. Lurking in the seawater, Epimetheus cast a glance at the son of the sea god falling from the sky, then continued watching the trajectory of the descending blow. Simple, direct, with no embellishment. This blow carried the weight of the heavens. Whether human or god, without the qualification, they would feel as if facing a falling finger of the sky god. As the blow landed, the northern sea shook, waves reaching the clouds, and the ensuing ripples flattened the ocean for miles. A flicker of astonishment flashed in Epimetheus' eyes. He knew if this strike had been aimed at him, it could have taken half his life. From now on, across the entire mortal world and the divine realm, there would be only a handful capable of battling this hero, who was still a god among mortals. And if he soon inherited the power borrowed from Atlas, even with the divine powers restored, the gods would be outclassed. Being a titan tasked with upholding strength, Atlas was exceedingly powerful, and his millennia of bearing the sky and the world's power had placed him near the peak of formidable divine forces. With his help, neither the hundred-headed dragon Typhon nor all gods could flaunt before this human. Teske, such is destiny. Pandora, you've held destiny for so long. Why can't you be like him? Shaking his head in exasperation, Epimetheus turned his gaze back to the fallen Triton. To die in the hands of the witch clutching the magic jar might have been your destined fate. The death you sought has now come for you. I wonder if it's destiny that forges the hero, or only heroes can bear destiny. Whatever it is, I can't be a hero.